Grace dropped the tray. The loud crash from upstairs shook the entire mansion. Without thinking, she ran toward the sound, her heartbeat pounding louder with every step. As she reached the end of the hallway, she noticed a man dressed in black rushing out of Mr. Daniel Carter's private office. "Hey!" she shouted. The stranger turned for a split second. His face was hidden beneath a cap, but his cold eyes met hers before he disappeared down the back staircase. Grace hesitated for only a moment before pushing open the office door. "Sir!" Daniel Carter, one of the richest businessmen in the country, lay motionless beside his desk. His breathing was weak. His hand trembled as though he was trying to reach something. "Oh my goodness!" Grace rushed to him and dropped to her knees. "Sir, can you hear me?" His eyes barely opened. "Victor." "What?" "Don't. Trust. Victor." His voice faded. "No. Stay with me." Grace grabbed her phone and called emergency services with shaking hands. "I need an ambulance. Please hurry." Someone collapsed. He's barely breathing. While waiting, she remembered the first aid classes volunteers had taught at the orphanage years ago. She checked his pulse. Weak. She adjusted his position, loosened his tie, and kept talking to him. "You'll be okay. Just keep breathing. Help is coming." Within minutes, sirens echoed outside. Doctors rushed inside, taking over. One paramedic looked at Grace. "You saved precious minutes. If you hadn't acted quickly, he might not have survived." Grace finally let out the breath she had been holding. Her legs gave way, and she sat quietly against the wall. She couldn't stop thinking about the man who had run from the office. This wasn't an accident. Someone wanted Daniel Carter dead. If emotional stories like this keep you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were Grace? Hours later, the mansion felt strangely quiet. The servants whispered among themselves. Mrs. Agnes, the elderly housekeeper, placed a warm cup of tea in front of Grace. "You did a brave thing today." Grace managed a small smile. "I just couldn't leave him." Mrs. Agnes squeezed her hand. "That's because your heart is different." Before Grace could answer, expensive shoes clicked across the marble floor. Victor Hayes entered. His perfectly pressed suit matched the fake smile on his face. "So," he said calmly, "you're the maid who found Daniel." Grace nodded. "Did you see anyone leaving his office?" She looked directly into his eyes. "I saw someone run away." Victor's smile disappeared for a second. "Probably another servant." "No. He was dressed in black." Victor folded his arms. "You're under a lot of stress. Sometimes our minds create things that aren't there." Grace didn't reply. Something about his voice made her uncomfortable. Then another woman entered. Linda Hayes. Victor's daughter. She looked Grace up and down before laughing. "So this is the famous Maid." Grace stayed silent. Linda smirked. "You've been working here for 6 months. Don't start imagining you're part of this family just because you called an ambulance." Mrs. Agnes stepped forward. "That's enough." Linda rolled her eyes. "I'm only telling the truth." Grace quietly picked up her cleaning supplies and walked away. She had learned long ago that arguing with people who looked down on her only made things worse. The next morning, Daniel regained consciousness at the hospital. Victor stood beside his bed. "You gave everyone quite a scare." Daniel frowned. "My office. Everything is fine." Daniel closed his eyes. "No." Victor leaned closer. "What do you mean?" Daniel struggled to remember. His head throbbed. Fragments flashed through his mind. A glass of water. A burning taste. Someone standing over him. Then darkness. "I can't remember." Victor smiled gently. "The doctors said stress caused you to collapse." Daniel wasn't convinced. Before he could ask another question, Grace quietly entered with fresh flowers from the mansion's garden. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." Daniel looked at her. For the first time, he really noticed her. Simple uniform. Kind eyes. Nervous smile. Victor immediately interrupted. Grace, leave the flowers and go. Daniel raised his hand. No. Victor looked surprised. I'd like to thank her. Grace stepped closer. I'm just happy you're alive, sir. They told me you helped save me. She looked down. Anyone would have done the same. Daniel shook his head. Not everyone. He smiled faintly. Thank you. Grace smiled back. You should rest. As she turned to leave, Daniel suddenly spoke again. Did you see anything? Grace hesitated. She glanced at Victor. Then back at Daniel. I saw someone leaving your office. Victor laughed softly. She's mistaken. Grace ignored him. The person was running. Wearing black. I couldn't see his face. Daniel's expression changed. Victor quickly stepped in. Daniel, don't fill your head with unnecessary worries. The doctor entered before Daniel could respond. Victor gave Grace a cold look as she left. Outside the room, Mrs. Agnes was waiting. What happened? Grace sighed. I don't think Mr. Victor wants Mr. Carter asking questions. Mrs. Agnes looked around before lowering her voice. Be careful. What do you mean? This house has secrets. What kind of secrets? Mrs. Agnes shook her head. The fewer people who know, the longer they live. Grace froze. Later that evening, she returned to cleaning Daniel's office. The police had already finished their inspection. Everything looked normal. Almost. As she dusted the bookshelf, she noticed a tiny piece of black fabric caught on a sharp corner. It looked as though someone's jacket had torn while rushing out. Grace carefully placed it inside a small envelope. Then she noticed something else. Daniel's desk drawer was slightly open. Inside, important business files had been scattered. She remembered clearly. Daniel always kept them perfectly organized. Someone had searched through them. Footsteps echoed behind her. Grace quickly closed the drawer. Victor stood in the doorway. What are you doing? Cleaning. He slowly walked inside. His eyes moved across the room before settling on the envelope in Grace's hand. What's that? Oh. She quickly slipped it into her apron pocket. Just some dust cloth. Victor smiled. Good. Then he leaned closer. So you really believe someone attacked Daniel? Grace met his gaze. I only know what I saw. Victor's smile vanished. Sometimes curiosity costs people their jobs. Grace felt a chill run down her spine. I understand. I hope you do. He turned and walked away. Grace waited until his footsteps disappeared. Then she pulled the torn black fabric from her pocket again. Her heart raced. She didn't know exactly what was happening. But one thing had become painfully clear. Daniel Carter wasn't safe. And whoever wanted him dead had just realized. She was paying attention. Grace barely slept that night. Victor's warning echoed in her mind. Asterisk, sometimes curiosity costs people their jobs. Asterisk. She wasn't afraid of losing her job. She was afraid that if she stayed silent, someone would kill Daniel before anyone discovered the truth. The next morning, she arrived early to clean the West Wing. As she passed Daniel's office, she stopped. The door was slightly open. She frowned. She had locked it herself the previous evening. Slowly, she pushed the door open. Nothing looked out of place at first. Then she noticed the safe. It was open. Her eyes widened. She clearly remembered Daniel locking it before he was taken to the hospital. Someone had been inside. She stepped closer. Most of the documents were still there, but one blue folder was missing. Looking for something. Grace jumped. Victor stood behind her. She quickly stepped away from the safe. I was just cleaning. Victor smiled, but his eyes were cold. You seem to spend a lot of time in this office. It's part of my work. Then stick to cleaning. Without another word, he walked in, closed the safe, and locked it. Grace noticed something strange. His right sleeve had a tiny tear near the elbow. It was small, but impossible to miss. Her heart pounded. She remembered the black piece of fabric she had picked up yesterday. Could it have come from Victor's jacket? She kept her face calm. I'll finish cleaning elsewhere. Good idea, Victor replied. As she walked away, she slipped her hand into her apron pocket and touched the small envelope. She had a feeling it would become important. Later that afternoon, Daniel returned home. His doctor insisted he avoid work for at least 2 weeks. Daniel laughed. My company won't stop because I'm resting. It might if you don't, the doctor replied. Grace helped Mrs. Agnes prepare Daniel's lunch. When she carried the tray into his study, Daniel looked exhausted. You should be resting, sir. I've never been good at resting. She smiled faintly. I noticed. Daniel looked at her for a moment. Grace. Yes, sir. Do you believe someone tried to kill me? She hesitated. I don't want to accuse anyone without proof. But I know what I saw. Daniel slowly nodded. So do I. Before Grace could answer, loud voices came from downstairs. Linda stormed into the study. Daniel. He sighed. What is it now? You promised to attend the charity gala with me this weekend. I'm not going. You can't embarrass me like this. My health comes first. Linda crossed her arms. You've changed since that maid started filling your head with nonsense. Grace lowered her eyes. Daniel's voice became firm. Leave her out of this. Linda looked shocked. You defended her. I defended someone who saved my life. Linda glared at Grace before walking away. As soon as she left, Daniel rubbed his forehead. I'm surrounded by people who want something from me. Grace quietly replied. Not everyone wants your money. Daniel looked at her. No, I suppose not. That evening, Grace walked toward the staff quarters. Halfway there, she heard whispers coming from the garage. She hid behind a parked vehicle. Victor was speaking to a mechanic. It has to look like an accident. The mechanic looked nervous. I don't like this. Victor pulled out a thick envelope. You'll like this. The mechanic stared at the money. What exactly do you want me to do? Daniel has an important meeting tomorrow. I only need his brakes to fail after he's on the highway. Grace covered her mouth to stop herself from gasping. Her entire body froze. The mechanic swallowed hard. If anyone finds out. They won't. Victor interrupted. Just do your job. The two men walked away. Grace remained hidden until they disappeared. Her hands trembled. She had heard every word. She ran straight to Mrs. Agnes. I need to tell Mr. Carter something. Mrs. Agnes looked alarmed. What happened? There's no time. She hurried to Daniel's room and knocked repeatedly. Come in. She rushed inside. Sir, please don't drive tomorrow. Daniel looked confused. What? Please. You have to trust me. What happened? Grace took a deep breath. I heard Victor paying someone to damage your car. Silence filled the room. Daniel slowly stood. Are you certain? I heard it myself. He stared into her eyes. She wasn't shaking from fear anymore. She was shaking because she knew how serious this was. Daniel picked up his phone. Mr. Collins. His lawyer answered immediately. Yes, Mr. Carter. I need you here first thing tomorrow morning. And don't tell anyone you're coming. The next morning, Daniel acted as though nothing had happened. Victor smiled during breakfast. Ready for today's meeting? Daniel smiled back. Of course. Grace watched nervously from the dining room. Daniel walked toward the garage. Victor followed. Grace's heart raced. Just before Daniel reached for the driver's door, she shouted, Wait! Everyone turned. She ran across the driveway. Please, don't drive it. Victor laughed loudly. This is getting ridiculous. Daniel looked at Grace. You really believe something is wrong? Please. Just let the mechanic inspect it first. Victor's smile faded. Daniel, you're really going to listen to a maid? Daniel ignored him. He called another mechanic from outside the company. 20 minutes later, the independent mechanic emerged from beneath the car with a pale face. Whoever touched this vehicle wanted the driver dead. Everyone froze. The brake line has been deliberately cut. Mrs. Agnes gasped. Daniel slowly turned toward Victor. Victor forced a laugh. "What are you looking at me for?" Daniel said nothing, but something had changed in his eyes. For the first time in years, he no longer trusted the man who had stood beside him for over 2 decades. Grace let out a quiet breath of relief. She had saved Daniel's life. Again. But she didn't notice the person watching her from an upstairs window. Linda. Her face was filled with anger. She whispered to herself, "That maid is ruining everything." And downstairs, Victor slipped his hand into his pocket, clenched his fist, and realized his plans were beginning to fall apart. He wasn't about to let Grace expose him, no matter the cost. If you're enjoying the twist so far, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more emotional stories, and tell us in the comments. Do you think Victor will give up, or is Grace now in even greater danger? Victor forced a smile, but everyone could see the panic in his eyes. "There must be some mistake," he said. "Maybe the mechanic is trying to get more money." The independent mechanic stood up and wiped his hands. "I've been repairing cars for 30 years. This wasn't wear and tear. Someone cut the brake line with a tool." Daniel looked at Victor without saying a word. The silence was louder than any argument. Finally, Daniel spoke. "The meeting is cancelled." Victor quickly stepped forward. "Daniel, don't overreact." "I'm not." Daniel's voice was calm. "I'm being careful." Victor knew he had lost this round. As everyone walked back into the mansion, Daniel quietly turned to Grace. "My study. 5 minutes." She nodded. Inside the study, Daniel closed the door. "My instincts have been warning me for months," he admitted. "Contracts disappearing. Money moving without approval. I ignored the signs because Victor has been my friend for over 20 years. Grace reached into her apron and carefully placed the small envelope on the desk. "I found this outside your office the day you collapsed." Daniel opened it. The torn piece of black fabric lay inside. His eyes narrowed. "Where exactly did you find it?" "On the corner of your bookshelf." Daniel slowly stood and walked to his closet. He pulled out an old photograph. Victor was standing beside him at a company event, wearing the same black designer jacket. The sleeve had a decorative black fabric with a unique stitching pattern. Daniel looked back at the torn piece. It looked almost identical. "I need proof," he whispered. Grace nodded. "I understand." Just then, Mr. Collins arrived. Daniel locked the office door behind him. "Everything said in this room stays here." The lawyer nodded. "I've already started checking Victor's recent financial activity. And he secretly created another company 6 months ago." Daniel frowned. "What kind of company?" "A holding company." "For what purpose?" Mr. Collins took a deep breath. "It appears someone has been transferring your company's assets into it." Daniel clenched his jaw. "So while I trusted him, he was preparing to take everything." Grace couldn't believe what she was hearing. Victor hadn't only wanted Daniel dead. He wanted to steal the empire they had built together. Daniel looked at Mr. Collins. "I want every security recording from this mansion." Mr. Collins hesitated. "There's a problem." "What?" "The cameras covering your office went offline 15 minutes before you collapsed." Grace immediately spoke. "Someone planned it." Mr. Collins nodded. "It certainly looks that way." Daniel looked at Grace. "You've trusted your instincts twice. I'm going to trust them again." Grace lowered her head. "I'll help however I can." Daniel smiled faintly. "I know." Outside the office, Victor stood behind the door. He couldn't hear every word, but he heard enough. Security recordings. Holding company. Proof. His face turned pale. "They're getting too close." That evening, Linda stormed into Victor's room. Dad, why is Daniel suddenly listening to that maid? Victor poured himself a drink. Because she's becoming a problem. So fire her. I can't. Why not? Victor slammed the glass onto the table. Because Daniel won't allow it anymore. Linda folded her arms. Then make Daniel stop trusting her. Victor looked at his daughter for a long moment. Then a slow smile spread across his face. I have a better idea. The following morning, the mansion buzzed with excitement. Daniel was hosting several international investors. Everything had to be perfect. Grace and the staff worked quickly to prepare the dining hall. Mrs. Agnes smiled at Grace. You've done enough for 1 week. Grace laughed softly. I'll rest when things calm down. As she adjusted the silverware, another maid approached. Grace, Mrs. Agnes needs you upstairs. Now. She said it's urgent. Grace hurried away. The moment she disappeared, Victor quietly entered the dining room. He removed a small velvet jewelry box from his pocket. Inside was a priceless diamond necklace that had belonged to Daniel's late wife. He slipped it beneath the tablecloth on Grace's serving cart. Then he walked away. An hour later, panic spread through the mansion. The necklace is missing. Everyone stopped working. Linda gasped dramatically. It was here this morning. Victor immediately took charge. No one leaves the mansion. Daniel looked confused. What necklace? Linda answered. Your wife's diamond necklace. Daniel's expression darkened. It never leaves the family safe. Victor nodded. Exactly. So someone here stole it. The staff exchanged frightened looks. Victor faced everyone. We'll search every room. One by one, the servants' rooms were checked. Nothing. Then they entered Grace's room. Grace looked nervous. I haven't taken anything. Victor opened her wardrobe. Nothing. Then he reached beneath her bed. Slowly, he pulled out the velvet jewelry box. Linda covered her mouth. I can't believe it. Grace's eyes widened. No. Victor opened the box. The diamond necklace sparkled under the light. I've never seen that before, Grace whispered. Victor looked disappointed. I defended you after Daniel's accident. And this is how you repay him. Grace shook her head, tears filling her eyes. I didn't steal it. Linda scoffed. It was under your bed. Grace looked desperately at Daniel. Sir. I swear. I've never even touched that necklace. The room fell silent. Daniel stared at the necklace. Then at Grace. Every person waited for his decision. Victor spoke first. I'm afraid there's only one option. She must be dismissed. Grace felt her heart sink. After everything. After risking her life twice. Was this how it would end? Just as Daniel opened his mouth to speak, another voice interrupted. Wait. Everyone turned. Mrs. Agnes hurried into the room, breathing heavily. I saw someone. Victor's face stiffened. Mrs. Agnes pointed toward the hallway. This morning. I saw another person enter Grace's room while she was helping in the kitchen. Victor forced a laugh. At your age, perhaps you were mistaken. Mrs. Agnes looked directly at him. I may be old. But my eyes still know the truth. Daniel slowly closed the jewelry box. No one is being fired today. Victor's smile disappeared. Daniel continued. Until I know exactly who put this necklace there, this matter isn't over. Grace looked at Daniel with tears in her eyes. For the first time in years, someone had chosen to believe her. And across the room, Victor realized something dangerous. Grace wasn't just surviving anymore. She was becoming Daniel Carter's most trusted ally. The final confrontation was getting closer, and so was the truth Grace never imagined was about to change her life forever. Daniel dismissed everyone except Mr. Collins. The necklace remained on the table. No one touched it. Grace quietly wiped away her tears. I don't understand, she whispered. Who would do this? Daniel looked at her. I think we both know. Victor folded his arms. Are you accusing me? I'm accusing no one, Daniel replied calmly. Not until I have evidence. Victor forced a smile. Then I'll gladly cooperate. He walked out with Linda close behind him. The moment the door closed, Daniel turned to Mr. Collins. I want every employee's access card checked. It will be done. I also want a DNA test arranged. Grace looked confused. A DNA test. Daniel hesitated. I'll explain when the time is right. Grace didn't ask another question. She trusted him, even though she had no idea why he suddenly wanted a DNA test. That night, Grace couldn't sleep. She stepped outside into the mansion garden. The cool night air helped clear her mind. You always come here when you're worried. She turned. Mrs. Agnes smiled gently as she approached. I'm sorry if I woke you. You didn't. Grace sat on the stone bench. Why does it feel like my whole life is changing? Mrs. Agnes looked toward the stars. Because sometimes God answers prayers in ways we don't expect. Grace smiled sadly. I've prayed my whole life to know who my parents were. Mrs. Agnes slowly reached into her pocket. I've kept something for many years. She handed Grace a tiny silver bracelet. Grace frowned. This is mine. Mrs. Agnes nodded. You were wearing it when you arrived at the orphanage as a baby. Grace carefully turned it over. On the inside were two tiny letters. Asterisk asterisk GC dot asterisk asterisk. I never noticed this. Mrs. Agnes smiled. I hoped one day it would help you find your family. Grace hugged the bracelet tightly. Little did she know. Mr. Collins had found the exact same initials in a 24-year-old hospital record. The next morning, Daniel sat silently inside Mr. Collins's office. The lawyer placed two files on the desk. I've confirmed something extraordinary. Daniel's hands trembled. Tell me. 24 years ago, your wife gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Daniel nodded. I know. The hospital records say the baby died. Daniel closed his eyes. The worst day of my life. Mr. Collins slowly pushed another document forward. The death certificate was forged. Daniel's eyes shot open. What? There was never a recorded burial. Silence filled the room. Mr. Collins continued. Instead, a newborn girl was secretly transferred to St. Mary's Orphanage. Daniel couldn't breathe. His voice barely came out. Grace. Mr. Collins nodded. The bracelet found in the orphanage records carried the initials GC. Daniel reached into his pocket. He removed the photo Grace had shown him. The bracelet on the baby in the picture matched perfectly. Tears rolled down his face. My daughter. She's been beside me all this time. Before Daniel could process the news, the laboratory called. The DNA results are ready. Daniel and Mr. Collins drove there immediately. The technician handed over the sealed envelope. Daniel's hand shook so badly he couldn't open it. Mr. Collins gently opened it instead. He read the first line. Then looked up. It's confirmed. Daniel stared at him. There is a 99.99% probability that Grace Johnson is your biological daughter. Daniel broke down. 24 years. 24 birthdays. 24 Christmases. 24 years of believing his little girl had died, when she had been alive all along. Working in his own house. Calling him sir. Meanwhile, Grace was upstairs changing the flowers in Daniel's late wife's bedroom. She smiled at the large family portrait. You looked so happy. Behind the picture frame, something caught her attention. There was a folded envelope taped to the wall. She carefully removed it. Across the front were handwritten words. Asterisk asterisk for my daughter. If anything ever happens to me. Asterisk asterisk. Grace frowned. My daughter. She slowly unfolded the letter. Before she could read the first sentence, the bedroom door burst open. Victor. His face was no longer calm. It was filled with rage. What are you doing? Grace instinctively stepped back. I found this behind the picture. Victor's eyes widened. He immediately recognized the envelope. No. He rushed toward her. Give it to me. Grace pulled away. No. Victor grabbed her wrist. She cried out in pain. Let me go. You don't know what you're holding. Grace struggled desperately. The letter slipped from her hand and landed on the floor. Victor reached for it. But another voice thundered through the room. Take one more step. And you'll regret it. Victor froze. Daniel stood in the doorway. His eyes burned with fury. For the first time in 24 years. He wasn't looking at Grace as his maid. He was looking at her as his daughter. And Victor had just laid his hands on her. The truth was finally about to come out. Daniel walked into the room slowly. His eyes never left Victor. Take your hand off her. Victor released Grace immediately and tried to force a smile. Daniel, you've got the wrong idea. The wrong idea? Daniel asked quietly. I just watched you grab a young woman in my house because of a letter. Victor glanced at the envelope lying on the floor. It belongs to the family. Daniel bent down, picked it up, and slipped it into his jacket. It does. Victor's face lost all color. Grace rubbed her wrist, still trying to understand what was happening. Sir, I don't understand. Daniel looked at her with eyes full of emotion. You will. He turned to Victor. My study. Now. A few minutes later, Daniel, Grace, Mr. Collins, Mrs. Agnes, Victor, and Linda were all gathered in the study. The room was silent. Daniel placed a sealed document on the desk. Victor tried to remain calm. If this is about the necklace, I've already said I know nothing about it. Daniel ignored him. Instead, he looked at Grace. Before we begin, I need you to know something. Grace nodded nervously. What is it? Daniel struggled to speak. His voice cracked. For 24 years. I believed my daughter died the day she was born. Grace's heart skipped a beat. I'm sorry. So was I. He slowly pushed the DNA report across the desk. I was wrong. Grace looked down at the report. She didn't understand the medical terms. Mr. Collins spoke softly. The test confirms you are Daniel Carter's biological daughter. Grace froze. She stared at Daniel. Then back at the report. Then at Mrs. Agnes. No. This can't be true. Mrs. Agnes wiped tears from her eyes. The bracelet, Grace. Grace slowly pulled the silver bracelet from her pocket. Daniel reached into a drawer and removed an old baby photograph. The tiny bracelet on the baby's wrist matched perfectly. Grace's hands began to shake. I've spent my whole life wondering who my parents were. Daniel stepped closer. And I've spent my whole life mourning a daughter who never died. Neither of them spoke. Then Grace burst into tears. Daniel opened his arms. I know I wasn't there. I know I missed every birthday. Every scraped knee. Every achievement. But if you'll let me, I'd like one chance to be your father. Grace couldn't hold back anymore. She ran into his arms. The room filled with tears. Even Mr. Collins quietly looked away. Mrs. Agnes smiled through her crying. I've waited years to see this. Linda stood speechless. She had never seen Daniel show this much emotion. Victor, however, looked terrified. Daniel gently let Grace go. Then he faced Victor. Now, let's talk about you. Victor tried to laugh. I don't know what you think I've done. Daniel placed another file on the desk. Your secret holding company. Another file. The forged hospital records. Another file. The sabotaged brakes. Then he placed the torn black fabric beside Victor's jacket. It matches perfectly. Victor's breathing became uneven. Daniel took one final document from the envelope. It was the letter Grace had found behind the portrait. My wife wrote this the night before she died. He unfolded it carefully. Her handwriting filled the page. If anything happens to me, Protect our daughter. Never let Victor make decisions for her. I overheard him speaking about our family in a way that frightened me. I pray I'm wrong, but if I'm not, keep our little Grace safe." The room fell silent. Victor closed his eyes. He knew it was over. Daniel looked at him. "Tell them." Victor remained silent. Daniel's voice hardened. "Tell them the truth." Victor slowly sat down. 24 years of lies collapsed in a single moment. "I never meant for it to go this far." Grace looked at him through tears. "What did you do?" Victor lowered his head. "When Daniel's wife died, I saw an opportunity. I knew he would never focus on business while raising a child alone. So I paid a hospital administrator to tell him the baby had died." Grace gasped. Victor continued. "The baby was secretly taken to an orphanage." Daniel clenched his fists but remained silent. "I became Daniel's closest advisor. He trusted me with everything. Over the years, I slowly gained control of the company." Linda stepped backward. "Dad." Victor couldn't look at her. When Daniel began reviewing old financial records, "I knew everything would collapse. So I poisoned his drink." Grace covered her mouth. "When that failed, I arranged the brake failure. And when Grace kept saving him, I tried to frame her." Linda's eyes filled with tears. "You tried to kill him?" Victor nodded without looking up. "I couldn't lose everything." At that moment, the front door opened. Several police officers entered with a warrant. The lead detective stepped forward. "Victor Hayes. You're under arrest for attempted murder, fraud, conspiracy, kidnapping, document forgery, and multiple financial crimes." Victor didn't resist. As officers handcuffed him, he looked once at Grace. "I'm sorry." Grace answered quietly. "You're only sorry because you got caught." The officers led him away. Linda collapsed into a chair, crying. "I never knew." Daniel sighed. "Neither did I." Weeks later, life looked completely different. Grace no longer wore a maid's uniform. Daniel offered to make her vice president of the company immediately. She smiled and shook her head. "I want to earn my place." Daniel smiled proudly. "That's exactly why you deserve it." Grace enrolled in business school while serving on the board of the foundation Daniel created in memory of his late wife. Together, they transformed part of the mansion into a learning center for orphan children. Mrs. Agnes became its honorary director. One afternoon, Grace stood in the garden where she had once wondered who her parents were. Daniel walked beside her. "Any regrets?" She smiled. "Only one." "What is it?" "I wish Mom had lived long enough to see today." Daniel looked toward the sky. "I think she can." Grace slipped her hand into his. For the first time in her life, she wasn't searching for where she belonged. She was home. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes kindness can change a life. And tell us in the comments, what was the biggest twist? The discovery that Grace was Daniel's daughter, or Victor's shocking confession?